You are probably brewing your coffee wrong. And I do not mean you're using the wrong brand or a cheap machine. I mean you are actively fighting against the laws of physics and chemistry every single morning. Most people think a perfect cup of coffee is about the beans. They think if they spend $20 on a bag of specialty roast, they're halfway there. But the reality is that coffee is one of the most complex chemical extractions on the planet. There are over 1,000 different aromatic compounds inside a single coffee bean. That's more than double the chemical complexity of wine. And yet, most of us treat it like we're just making instant soup. If you've ever wondered why your coffee tastes bitter, or sour, or just plain boring compared to that $7 cup at the high-end cafe down the street, it's because they understand the hidden science that you're missing. Today, we are breaking down the molecular secrets of the perfect brew, from the mineral content of your water to the literal vibration of the grind. Let us start with the thing that 99% of people ignore: the water. Your cup of coffee is 98% water. If you are using tap water, you have already lost the game. Think about it. Tap water is loaded with chlorine, fluoride, and a cocktail of minerals that are designed for safety, not for flavor extraction. But here's where it gets weird. You don't actually want perfectly pure distilled water either. If you use 100% pure H2O, your coffee will taste flat and dull. You need minerals. Specifically, you need magnesium and calcium. Researchers at the University of Bath discovered that magnesium ions are like little magnets for flavor. They are exceptionally good at pulling out the sharp, fruity, and acidic compounds from the coffee grounds. Calcium, on the other hand, is better at pulling out the heavy, creamy notes. If your water has the wrong ratio of these minerals, or if it is too hard, the water becomes saturated and cannot absorb the flavor from the beans. It is like trying to squeeze more people into an already crowded elevator. There is simply no room for the flavor to go. This is why professional baristas often use custom mineral packets to treat their water. They are literally engineering the liquid at a molecular level to ensure it can strip the best parts of the bean away during the brew. Now, let us talk about the bean itself, specifically the roast. When you look at a coffee bean, you are looking at the result of the Maillard reaction. This is the same chemical process that makes a steak brown or a loaf of bread crusty. During the roasting process, sugars and amino acids react to create hundreds of new flavor molecules. But there is a ticking clock. As soon as that bean leaves the roaster, it starts to die. Coffee is a fresh produce item, but we treat it like a dry pantry staple. Within 24 hours of roasting, the bean begins to leak carbon dioxide. This is called degassing. If you brew your coffee too soon after roasting, say within 48 hours, that escaping gas will actually push the water away from the grounds. It creates a physical barrier that prevents extraction. This is why you see that bubbly foam, called the bloom, when you pour water over fresh grounds. But if you wait too long, say 30 days, those gases are gone and they take the volatile oils with them. The coffee becomes oxidized. It starts to taste like paper or cardboard. The sweet spot for most beans is between 7 and 14 days after the roast date. If your bag of coffee does not have a roast date on it, it is probably already stale. Then we get to the grind. This is where the physics gets intense. The goal of grinding is to increase the surface area of the coffee so the water can do its job. But if you are using a cheap blade grinder, you are destroying your chances of a good cup. Blade grinders do not grind, they shatter. They create a mix of massive chunks, which we call boulders, and microscopic dust, which we call fines. When you pour hot water over this mess, the dust over-extracts instantly, creating a bitter, burnt taste. Meanwhile, the boulders under-extract, leaving behind a sour, weak flavor. You end up with a cup that is somehow both bitter and sour at the same time. This is why coffee nerds spend $500 or more on burr grinders. A burr grinder uses two revolving surfaces to crush the beans into a perfectly uniform size. Every single grain is the exact same diameter. This ensures that every grain gives up its flavor at the exact same rate. But how much coffee should you actually use? Most people just use a scoop and hope for the best. In the world of science, we use the golden ratio. This is generally 1 part coffee to 16 parts water by weight, not volume, weight. If you want to be precise, you need a scale. Using a scoop is like trying to build a house by measuring the wood in handfuls. Different beans have different densities. A scoop of a dark roast weighs significantly less than a scoop of a light roast because the dark roast has been puffed up by heat. If you want consistency, you have to measure in grams. For a standard mug, that usually means about 22 grams of coffee to 350 grams of water. Now, let us talk about the most controversial variable, temperature. We have all been told that coffee should be made with boiling water, that is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a lie. Boiling water is a blunt instrument. It is too aggressive. It scalds the grounds and pulls out the tannins and the bitter woody fibers of the bean. The Specialty Coffee Association recommends a window between 195 and 205 degrees. At 195 degrees, you get a much softer, sweeter extraction. At 205 degrees, you get more body and intensity. Even a 2-degree difference can completely change the flavor profile of the cup. If you do not have a thermometer, wait about 30 seconds after your kettle whistles before you pour. That usually drops the temp into the safe zone. Once the water hits the grounds, the clock starts. This is the extraction phase. Think of it like a race. The first things to be extracted are the acids and the fats. These are the bright, floral, and fruity notes. Next comes the sugars. This is where the sweetness and balance come from. Finally, if you let it go too long, you get the plant fibers and the dry, bitter compounds. The secret to a perfect cup is stopping the race right after the sugars have arrived, but before the bitterness starts. For a pour-over, that is usually around 3 minutes. For a French press, it is about 4 minutes. If your coffee tastes too sharp and sour, you ended the race too early. You need to grind finer or brew longer. If it tastes like an ashtray, you let it go too long. There is one more hidden layer of science that most people never consider, the psychology of the vessel. Believe it or not, the color and shape of your mug change the way your brain perceives the taste. A study published in the journal Flavor found that coffee served in a white mug was perceived as significantly more intense and less sweet than the exact same coffee served in a blue or transparent mug. The high contrast of the dark liquid against the white ceramic tricks your brain into expecting a more bitter experience. Even the weight of the mug matters. A heavier mug leads to a perception of higher quality and a more expensive flavor profile. So, if you want to master the hidden science of coffee, here is your checklist. Use filtered water with a bit of mineral content. Buy beans that were roasted between 7 and 21 days ago. Use a burr grinder to get a uniform size. Weigh your coffee and water at a 1:16 ratio. Use water that is 200 degrees, and time your brew to exactly 3 or 4 minutes, depending on your method. It sounds like a lot of work, but once you taste the difference, you will realize that you haven't really been drinking coffee your whole life. You have just been drinking brown water. The science is there. You just have to use it. Now go out there and brew the best cup of your life. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We are diving deep into the science of everyday things every single week. Thanks for watching, and stay caffeinated.